It was late when I first noticed something was wrong. The quiet hum of the night seemed off, as though something was just waiting to happen. I glanced around the room, the familiar objects now feeling like strangers. The clock ticked louder than usual, and my heart raced without reason. I told myself it was nothing, just the nerves. But then I heard it, a faint knock at the door. Hesitant, I stood up, the air in the room growing thick. Who could it be at this hour? I crept to the door, trying not to make a sound. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob, half expecting someone to be standing there, waiting. But when I opened the door, there was nothing, just the empty hallway, eerily still. The cold draft swept in, making me shiver. I glanced down to find a piece of paper lying on the doorstep, its edges curled slightly, as if it had been there for a while. I bent down to pick it up, my fingers brushing the crinkled note. The note was simple, written in hurried, barely legible handwriting. "It's time." That was all it said. The words burned into my mind, a chilling sensation creeping up my spine. My first instinct was to toss it aside and forget about it. But something held me back. I couldn't explain why, but the message felt personal, like it was meant just for me. What did it mean? Who was it from? And why now? My thoughts raced, but the answers eluded me. I tried to push the thought aside, but it gnawed at me all night. Was I just overthinking the knocking? The note, it could all be a coincidence, right? I tried to sleep, but every little noise seemed amplified in the dark. The wind rustling the leaves outside, the creak of the floorboards. It was as if the house itself was alive, watching me. I pulled the covers tighter around me, trying to shake the feeling of unease that had taken root. Morning came, but the sense of dread didn't leave. I went about my usual routine, but everything felt different. The familiar sights, my coffee mug, the newspaper on the counter, seemed foreign, as if they belonged to someone else. I kept thinking about the note. What if it was a warning, a sign? My mind raced through possibilities, each more absurd than the last. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something I wasn't prepared for. By the time I left for work, the streets were unusually quiet, not a soul in sight, as if the world had pressed pause. The silence felt oppressive. I drove to my office, trying to push the thoughts from my mind, but they kept creeping back in. I arrived and went through the motions, meeting with clients, checking emails, but it was all mechanical. It was like I was moving through a fog. Every few seconds, I'd glance over my shoulder, half expecting someone to be watching me. It wasn't until the afternoon that I saw him, a man, standing across the street, staring right at me. His face was hidden in the shadows of a hood, but his posture was unnervingly still. I froze, feeling my pulse quicken. Was it him? The person behind the note? The man didn't move, not even when I stared directly at him. He just stood there, watching. I felt the blood drain from my face, my hands clammy as I fought the urge to look away. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just a coincidence, but the sensation of being watched never left. That night, I found another note. This one slipped under my door. It was even more cryptic than the first. "You can't hide. I know what you've done." My heart skipped a beat. What did it mean? What had I done? Panic surged through me, and I slammed the door shut, leaning against it as I tried to catch my breath. This was no longer a coincidence. I couldn't stop shaking as I stood in front of the door, the second note gripped in my hand. My mind raced. What did it mean? What had I done? I thought back to the past few days, the oddities, the strange coincidences. Could I have missed something? Was someone trying to send me a message? There was no time to waste. I needed answers, but the more I thought about it, the more confused I became. I grabbed my phone, preparing to call someone for help, but stopped when I noticed something in the corner of my eye. The shadows in the hallway seemed deeper than usual. I turned slowly, expecting nothing, but to my horror, a figure stood just at the edge of the darkness. I couldn't make out the details, just a silhouette, still as stone. Panic surged in my chest, and I stumbled back. My breath hitched, and, for a moment, I thought I might faint. My mind screamed, "Run!" but my legs refused to move. I stood frozen, staring into the void where the figure had once been. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure vanished. No sound, no movement, just gone. I waited for a long moment, unable to believe what I had seen. Was I imagining things? I stepped forward cautiously, my heart still pounding in my chest, and peered into the hallway. Nothing. It was just an ordinary dim-lit hallway, the same one I'd passed through countless times. But now it felt different. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was hiding just out of sight. I spent the rest of the night locked in my room, pacing, unable to sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, felt like an ominous warning. I checked the locks on the windows, the door, everything. I was being paranoid, I told myself. But with every passing minute, the dread grew heavier. I felt like I was being drawn into something I couldn't escape. The feeling of being watched never left. I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on to my sanity. The next morning, I went into work with a mind full of dread. As soon as I arrived, I saw him again, the man in the hood. He was standing across the street, just like the day before, but this time, his eyes were locked on me. There was no mistaking it. He was watching me, following me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was overreacting, but the anxiety clawed at my chest. What was he waiting for? I couldn't stop myself from looking over my shoulder as I walked through the door, a cold sweat forming on my forehead. I tried to keep my composure at work, but it was impossible. My phone buzzed with a new message, and no number. I opened it, heart pounding. "You're not safe. The end is near. Do you remember?" The words were like a punch to the gut. Do I remember? I asked myself. What was this about? What end? I felt a surge of panic and glanced around, as if expecting the walls to close in on me. This wasn't just some prank anymore. Someone was targeting me. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. As the day dragged on, I could hardly focus. The note, the man, the mysterious messages, nothing made sense. I could feel myself unraveling, piece by piece. I decided to take a walk at lunch, hoping to clear my head, but when I stepped outside, the man was there again. This time, he was much closer, standing in the shadows of the alley next to my building. My heart skipped a beat. He was waiting for me. My hands trembled as I turned and hurried back inside, my thoughts in a frenzy. Who was he? Why was he doing this? I had to confront him. I couldn't keep running. That night, I decided I would find out who was behind this. I needed to know why I was being targeted. The clock struck midnight when I gathered the courage to step outside. The streets were empty, eerily quiet, as I made my way toward the alley. My breath came in short, sharp bursts, but I pressed on, determined. I turned the corner, and there he was, standing in the same spot. His hood was down this time, revealing a face I didn't recognize. He smiled a cold, unsettling smile. "I've been waiting," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You were always meant to find out. It's your turn now." I took a step back, my legs feeling weak beneath me. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he just stared at me, the smile never leaving his face. "You'll understand soon enough," he replied cryptically, and before I could ask another question, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, as though he had never been there at all. I stood frozen, the air thick with the weight of his words. "It's your turn now." What did that mean? I wanted to call the police, to tell someone about what had happened, but I knew it wouldn't make sense. The man hadn't hurt me, he had just spoken cryptic words that felt like a threat. But why? I couldn't stop shaking as I walked back home, the night air biting at my skin. I wasn't sure what had just happened, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Something was coming. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every flutter of the curtains in the wind made me jump. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was lurking nearby, waiting for the right moment to strike. The man's words echoed in my mind. "You'll understand. Soon enough." What did he mean by that? What was I supposed to understand? I couldn't make sense of it. The more I thought about it, the more my head spun. Maybe I was losing my mind. The next few days passed in a blur. Work was a distraction, but even there, I couldn't focus. I kept expecting the man to appear again, or for something else strange to happen. And then, it did. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message. "You've been warned. It's time." I looked around the office, my heart racing. Who was sending these messages? What did they want from me? I immediately called the number back, but it went straight to voicemail. I had no answers, just more questions, and the mounting pressure of an invisible force closing in on me. I spent the rest of the day staring at my phone, waiting for the next message. Every time it buzzed, I felt a jolt of fear. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, trapped in this suffocating fear of the unknown. But the more I tried to shake it off, the more it consumed me. My thoughts spiraled. Maybe it was a mistake to confront him. What if I had done something wrong? What if I had opened a door I couldn't close? That evening, I tried to leave the house, desperate for some kind of normalcy. But when I stepped outside, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The man was standing at the end of the street, watching me. His hood was up again, hiding his face. He was just standing there, unmoving. My heart pounded in my chest as I quickly turned and ran back inside, locking the door behind me. How had he found me? Why was he following me? I couldn't stop thinking about it. He was out there, watching me, and I was completely powerless. Every time I closed my eyes, his face flashed in my mind. Every knock, every phone call, felt like it could be him. I started checking every corner, every shadow, even in my own home. I couldn't trust anything anymore. I needed answers, but how could I find them? Who was this man, and what did he want? I had to confront him again, but this time, I had to be smarter. The following night, I decided to stay out of sight. I didn't want to lead him to me. I stayed in the back room of my house, watching through the curtains, waiting. My heart hammered in my chest. I couldn't take the waiting anymore. What was I supposed to do? My phone vibrated on the table. A new message. "Don't be afraid. You're already too late." I froze. What did that mean? Was this a warning or a threat? My hands trembled as I looked at the words. I had to find out. The fear gnawed at me, but I couldn't let it control me. I had to act. I grabbed my jacket, determined to face whatever was coming. I stepped outside, my eyes darting around. There was no sign of him. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe he was gone. But something deep inside me told me that wasn't the case. The message, the cryptic words, they meant something more. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. The air felt thick, like a storm was brewing. I decided to go to the one place I thought could offer some safety, my best friend's house. He was the only person who might understand what was going on, who wouldn't think I was losing my mind. I called him and told him everything, how I'd been followed, how I'd been receiving strange messages, and how I was being watched. He listened quietly, then told me he'd be right there. Within an hour, he was at my door, his face a mix of concern and skepticism. "Let's go out and find some answers," he said. We drove through the night, scanning the streets for any sign of the man, but there was nothing. Just empty streets and the occasional car passing by. My mind raced. Where could he be? What was he waiting for? We decided to stop at a cafe, hoping the caffeine might give us the energy to keep looking. We sat down at a corner table, trying to look casual, but I couldn't focus. Every passing face seemed like someone I knew. Every movement made me jump. That's when I saw him again. The man. He was standing outside the cafe, just across the street. His eyes locked with mine. The blood drained from my face. I froze, not knowing what to do. He smiled a cold, menacing smile then turned, walking away. He knew I had seen him. He wanted me to know he was there. My heart raced, and I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my coffee. "We have to go," I whispered to my friend. "Now." We followed him at a distance, trying to stay hidden in the shadows. The city was quiet, almost too quiet. We turned down alleyways, moved through back streets, but the man didn't look back. It was like he knew we were there, like he was leading us somewhere. Finally, we reached an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of town. He stopped in front of the door, looking at us. The smile was gone, replaced by something darker. "I knew you'd follow," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness. "It's too late now." My blood ran cold. What did he mean? Too late for what? Before I could ask, the door to the building creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness. Inside, I took a step back. "We shouldn't go in," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but my friend pushed ahead, his curiosity outweighing his caution. "We need to know what's going on," he said. Reluctantly, I followed him, my heart pounding in my chest, every instinct screaming at me to turn and run, but I didn't. We entered the darkness. The building smelled musty, the air thick with dust. The only sound was the echo of our footsteps on the old wooden floor. I couldn't see a thing, but I could feel eyes on me. It was as though the walls themselves were watching. My friend stopped suddenly, and I nearly ran into him. "What is it?" I whispered. He didn't answer. I stepped around him and saw it. In the far corner of the room, there was a strange, flickering light. It was coming from a small TV, its screen showing nothing but static. I felt a chill run down my spine. The room felt wrong. The air was too cold, too oppressive. My friend took a step forward, but I grabbed his arm. "We need to leave," I said urgently. But he shook me off. "We've come this far. Let's see what's going on." Against my better judgment, I followed him toward the screen. As we got closer, the static cleared, and a face appeared on the screen. It was mine, my own face, staring back at me, blank and lifeless. My breath caught in my throat. How was this possible? I didn't understand. My friend turned to me, his face pale. "What the hell is going on?" he asked, his voice shaky. I didn't know. I had no answers. The image on the screen shifted. Now it was a video me, walking down the street. I froze, staring at the footage. This was from earlier that day, when I had seen the man. But how? Who had been following me, filming me? My mind raced. "We have to get out of here," I said, backing away. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us. We both spun around, our hearts pounding. The man was standing there again, his face hidden in the shadows. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice cold. "It's already too late for you." I could hear the door lock behind him. We were trapped. My friend grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the window. "We need to break out of here," he whispered frantically. But I couldn't move. I was frozen in fear. What did he mean? Too late. What was happening? The man took a slow step forward, his eyes glinting with something dark. "You've been warned," he said, almost lovingly. "And now it's time for you to understand." He raised his hand, and suddenly, the room was filled with a blinding light. I couldn't see, couldn't move. It was as if time had stopped. And then, just as suddenly, the light was gone. I blinked, trying to adjust, and found myself standing in an unfamiliar place. The room was cold, the walls lined with bookshelves. and strange artifacts. A fireplace crackled in the corner, casting flickering shadows across the room. The man was gone. My friend was beside me, his eyes wide with fear. "Where are we?" he whispered. "What's happening?" I had no answer. I was just as confused as he was. The only thing I knew was that we were no longer in the building we had entered. This place, it didn't feel real. The silence in the room was deafening. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. I glanced around, trying to make sense of our surroundings. Everything seemed out of place. Strange symbols were carved into the wooden beams, and the air was thick with a musty smell. It was like we had stepped into another world, a world that didn't belong in this reality. My friend, still in shock, clutched his phone, but there was no signal, no way to contact anyone. We were completely isolated. "Where are we?" My voice came out shakier than I intended. My friend didn't respond right away. He just stood there, eyes wide, as if trying to figure out the same thing. Finally, he turned to me, his face pale. "I don't know. This doesn't feel right," I agreed. It felt like we were being watched, as though something or someone was waiting for us to make our next move. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but I couldn't move. The fear had taken hold. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room. "You've been brought here for a reason," it said, deep and distorted. It sent a chill running down my spine. I spun around, trying to find the source of the voice, but there was no one there. "Who's there?" I shouted, but the voice didn't answer directly. "You've always known this moment would come," it continued. "Now, you will understand." The words hung in the air, as if they were pressing down on me, suffocating me. My friend stumbled back, his face draining of color. "This is a trap," he whispered, barely audible. "We shouldn't be here." But it was too late. The door behind us slammed shut with a deafening crash. We both spun toward it, desperate to escape, but the door was locked, and no matter how much we pulled and pushed, it wouldn't budge. We were trapped. I felt the weight of everything closing in. The walls seemed to get closer with each passing second. Then, I heard the soft sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing through the room. I turned, but there was still no one in sight. My heart hammered in my chest. "Who's there?" I yelled again, my voice more frantic this time. The footsteps stopped, and in the eerie silence that followed, a shadow began to form in the corner of the room. At first, it was just a shape, but slowly, it began to take form, a figure, cloaked in darkness, with only the outline of its face visible. I couldn't see the person's face, only their eyes. Cold, lifeless eyes that seemed to pierce straight through me. "I see you've met my friend," the figure said, its voice calm and unnerving. "But don't worry, you'll understand soon enough." I could feel my legs shaking, but I couldn't move. "Who are you?" I managed to force the words out, but the figure only smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. "Someone you've been avoiding," it said cryptically. "But it's time to face the truth." The figure moved closer, its footsteps unnaturally silent. "You've been running from this for too long," it said, its voice now a whisper, but it felt like it was everywhere. "But there's no escaping it. Not anymore." I stepped back, my heart racing in my chest. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The figure didn't answer right away. Instead, it extended its hand toward me, as if offering something, but I couldn't see what. "You've been chosen," it said simply. "Chosen? For what?" I almost yelled, but the figure didn't answer. The room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch across the walls like they were alive. I felt a creeping sense of dread wash over me. The figure stepped closer, the shadows wrapping around it like a cloak. My mind screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. I could feel the darkness closing in, tightening around me like a vice. The figure was inches from me now. Its eyes gleamed with an unnatural intensity. "You'll never leave this place," it whispered, "not until you understand." The words cut through the silence like a knife. And then, in an instant, the figure was gone, vanishing into the shadows from which it had emerged. The room felt emptier than before, but the sense of dread lingered. My friend and I exchanged a look, neither of us sure what to do next. I didn't know how long we stood there, lost in the darkness. The silence was unbearable, and every passing moment felt like a countdown to something I couldn't understand. My mind was reeling, trying to piece together what had just happened, but there were no answers, only more questions. Finally, I broke the silence. "We need to get out of here," I said, my voice shaky. But my friend didn't respond. He was staring at something behind me. I turned, following his gaze, and that's when I saw it. A door, appearing out of nowhere, as if it had materialized from the very air itself. It wasn't there before, I was sure of it. It stood in the middle of the room, faint light seeping from underneath it. The moment I saw it, I knew we had to go through. It was our only way out. But a part of me hesitated. What awaited us on the other side? Was this another trap? "We have no choice," my friend muttered, his voice tight with fear. Without another word, he walked toward the door. I followed reluctantly, my hand brushing against the cold handle. I pushed the door open, and for a split second, I felt a wave of relief. But as I stepped through, that relief vanished. The world beyond was unfamiliar, dark, and twisted. It was like stepping into another dimension, a place where reality, no longer made sense. The air was thick with fog, and the ground beneath us felt unstable. There were no buildings, no streets, just endless darkness, stretching out in every direction. The only light came from the faint glow of the door behind us, now closing slowly, as if it were swallowing us whole. My friend and I exchanged panicked looks. We had no idea where we were or how we'd gotten there, but we couldn't go back. The door had disappeared, leaving us with only the black void. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the darkness. The sound seemed to come from everywhere, at once, reverberating through the air. My friend grabbed my arm. "What was that?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "I don't know," I replied, my breath catching in my throat. The growl came again, louder this time, followed by a scraping sound, like claws dragging across stone. Something was out there, something we couldn't see, but it was getting closer. "Run," I gasped, pulling my friend behind me. We bolted, our footsteps pounding against the soft ground, but the sounds of whatever was lurking in the darkness followed us. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel its presence, closing in with every passing second. We ran until our legs burned, until we could barely breathe. But no matter how far we ran, the darkness seemed endless, and the sounds of those horrible growls grew louder, closer. Out of nowhere, the ground beneath us gave way. I screamed as I fell, my friend's hand slipping out of mine as I tumbled into the black void. I tried to reach out, but everything was too dark, too empty. My body slammed into the cold, hard ground, and everything went black. When I awoke, I was lying on the floor of a new room. It was different this time. The walls were made of stone, and there was a dim light flickering from a few candles on the floor. I tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through my head. My friend was nowhere to be seen. Panic surged through me again, but I forced myself to focus. What was happening? How did I end up here? And where was my friend? I stood shakily, trying to steady myself. The room was eerily quiet, and the smell of burning wax filled the air. My heart pounded in my chest as I took a few steps forward, but then I stopped dead in my tracks. Across the room, there was a figure. It wasn't the same man from before, but it was another person, dressed in black robes, standing motionless in the corner. "You've finally arrived," the figure said, its voice low, almost familiar. I froze. How could this person know I was here? "What do you want from me?" I demanded. The figure didn't move, its face hidden beneath a hood. "You've been chosen," it replied, its voice echoing in the stone room. "This is your final test." I took a step back, fear coursing through my veins. "Test? What are you talking about?" But the figure remained silent. Only the flickering of the candles, breaking the stillness. Without warning, the walls seemed to shift, the room growing colder. The air thickened, and the shadows stretched, as if they were alive. I could hear whispers, now soft, unintelligible voices, swirling around me. I couldn't make out the words, but they sounded urgent, desperate. I looked around, feeling trapped in a maze of shifting stone and darkness. The figure raised its hand slowly, as if beckoning me forward. I hesitated, but something deep inside me told me that I had no choice. I had to face whatever was coming. The figure's eyes glowed faintly beneath the hood, and its voice broke through the growing noise around me. "You are part of something, Greta. You have always been a part of it." The ground beneath me rumbled as if responding to its words. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaky. The figure stepped closer. "It's time for you to remember. You were never meant to forget." I reached out instinctively, but as I touched its hand, a rush of images flooded my mind. Faces, places, memories, none of them my own. They were fragments, disjointed, yet they felt like pieces of my past. I could see flashes of a life I didn't recognize, but somehow, it all felt so familiar. The figure watched as I struggled to make sense of what was happening. "It's all coming back to you now, isn't it?" it asked. My vision blurred, and I collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed by the weight of the images. But then, just as suddenly as the flood of memories had begun, it stopped. The room was silent again, and I was left gasping for breath, unsure of what to believe. My head throbbed. I forced myself to my feet, still reeling from the rush of memories that weren't mine. The room was still, as though nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. The air was heavy, and I could almost hear the whispers of the past echoing around me. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and turned toward the figure. It stood motionless, waiting. My thoughts raced. "What's the point of all this?" I asked, my voice hoarse. The figure's lips curled into a faint, almost sympathetic smile. "You must understand the truth, or you will never be free." I shook my head, confused and overwhelmed. "Free from what?" I demanded, but the figure's answer was a mere whisper. "From yourself." And just like that, the room began to shift again, the walls creaking and groaning, as if they were alive. I had no choice but to follow. The hallway ahead of me twisted and turned in impossible ways. It was like walking through a labyrinth, the passageways stretching farther than they should. The air grew colder, the darkness more oppressive. I could barely see my hand in front of me. Panic started to rise again, and I forced myself to take a deep breath. There had to be a way out. There always was. But the more I tried to find it, the deeper I seemed to sink. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the darkness, causing me to freeze. "You can't escape, not now." It was the same voice from before, low and haunting. I spun around, but there was no one there. The shadows shifted, and I could feel something watching me. "You're trapped," the voice continued. "This is your reality now. This is where you will stay." My heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't let that be true. I refused to believe it. I continued to move forward, determined not to let the fear control me. The walls seemed to close in, and the whispers grew louder, filling my ears. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew they were meant for me. They taunted me, urging me to give in, but I kept walking. Every step was a battle. The figure's words echoed in my mind. "You have always known this moment would come." What did that mean? I didn't remember anything that could explain this nightmare. Then, just as suddenly as it had all begun, the hallway opened up into a large, empty room. The floor was made of cold stone, and the ceiling was impossibly high, lost in the shadows. Above, I could feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. There, standing in the center of the room, was a large, ornate mirror. I walked toward it, hesitant but drawn to it like a moth to a flame. The mirror's surface rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. My reflection appeared, but it wasn't just me. There was someone else standing behind me, someone I couldn't see. I spun around quickly, but there was no one there. I turned back to the mirror, my breath catching in my throat. The person in the reflection was smiling. It was a cold, knowing smile, the same smile I had seen on the figure earlier. The reflection moved, but I didn't. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The reflection didn't answer at first. Instead, it simply stepped forward, closing the distance between us. I reached out, desperate to touch the glass, but the reflection mirrored my movements perfectly, as though it was waiting for me to make the first move. "You know who I am," the reflection said, its voice echoing in my mind. "You've always known." I staggered back, my heart racing. "No, I don't," I shouted. "I don't know you." But the reflection only smiled, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity. "You do," it whispered. "You just don't remember." My mind reeled, the world around me spinning. The air felt thick, and I could barely breathe. The mirror seemed to draw me in, its surface warping, and for a moment, I thought I might fall into it. But then, as quickly as it had started, everything stopped. The mirror's surface became still once more, and my reflection was gone. The room around me seemed to settle, the oppressive weight lifting just a little. But I could still feel it. The presence, the whispers, they never really went away. They were just waiting, lurking in the shadows. I looked around the room, my heart pounding in my chest. Was it over? Had I learned whatever lesson I was supposed to learn? "No," the voice said, cutting through my thoughts. "This is just the beginning." The room seemed to ripple again, and the floor beneath me shifted. I stumbled, nearly losing my balance. The walls groaned, and the shadows seemed to grow longer, twisting into shapes I couldn't quite make out. The figure's face flashed in my mind. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the darkness, my voice shaking with fear. The darkness responded, not with words, but with a sudden gust of wind that seemed to come from nowhere. It tore at my clothes, whipping around me. I could feel the cold creeping in, colder than before, as if it were coming from the very heart of the shadows. "Everything," the voice whispered. "I want everything. And you are the key." The air grew thick again, and the shadows seemed to close in. Tightening their grip, I backed away from the center of the room, my breath coming in shallow gasps. "I won't give you anything," I spat. "You can't make me." The room seemed to respond to my defiance, the shadows shifting as if they were alive, reaching out for me. But even as they pressed closer, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to give up. Not now. I wouldn't let this thing, this nightmare, control me any longer. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my racing heart. I thought back to everything that had led me here, the notes, the figure, the strange mirror. There had to be a way out. I just needed to focus. I opened my eyes and looked around. The room was still there, the shadows still looming. But now I saw something else, something small, almost hidden in the far corner of the room. A door, just barely visible through the haze. Without thinking, I moved toward it, pushing past the dark tendrils that reached for me. The air grew colder with each step, but I didn't stop. I reached the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. It was cold to the touch, and for a moment, I hesitated. But then I opened it. The moment I did, a flood of light poured into the room. Blinding me for a second, I stepped through, and the door slammed shut behind me, cutting off the darkness. I found myself standing outside, bathed in the light of the moon. The world was still, eerily quiet. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe, but even as I stood there, a gnawing feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I hadn't escaped yet. Not completely. I glanced around, trying to get my bearings. The streets were deserted, the buildings around me strangely unfamiliar. Was this the same city, the same world? It felt like a dream, like I had woken up into another reality. But everything seemed so off. The air was too still, the shadows too long. My instincts screamed that I was being watched again. I wasn't free. Not yet. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet trembled. It wasn't just a shake, it was a deep, rumbling sensation, as though the earth itself was reacting to something. I looked around frantically, searching for the source. The sky above darkened, the clouds swirling in unnatural patterns. The air grew heavy once again. I could feel the presence returning, the weight of it pressing down on me. Something was coming, and it wasn't good. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let whatever was coming catch up to me. The streets seemed to stretch endlessly before me, the familiar landmarks vanishing as I sprinted forward. My lungs burned, and my legs screamed for rest, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not with the rumbling growing louder behind me. Whatever it was following me, gaining on me. I stumbled into an alley, hoping to hide, but the shadows seemed to move with me. The rumbling reached a deafening crescendo, and then a crack. A loud, earth-shattering crack that sent me crashing to the ground. I looked up, and the sky was torn open, the darkness spilling out in torrents, swallowing the world whole. And then, the voice returned. It's over. My mind reeled. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to face the truth. I looked up into the dark sky, desperate for some answer, some way out. But there was nothing, only the sound of the world crumbling around me, and the presence that had haunted me from the beginning. The rumbling didn't stop. It intensified, shaking the ground beneath my feet, and for a moment, I felt as though I were suspended in time. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of a truth I wasn't ready to face. It's over, the voice repeated, and this time, it felt like a final judgment, a sentence I couldn't escape. I stumbled back, trying to shield myself from whatever was coming. But there was no shelter. I didn't know where to run anymore. The world around me was unraveling, the very fabric of reality tearing apart. The dark sky twisted, and the ground cracked open, spilling a deep, unyielding blackness into the streets. My breath caught in my throat as I realized it wasn't just the city that was crumbling, it was everything. The memories, the moments, the very essence of what I thought was real. It was all falling apart. I fell to my knees, the weight of the realization crushing me. No, I whispered. This can't be real. But deep down, I knew it was. This was the end of everything I had known. The dark void that surrounded me was not just physical, it was a reflection of something deeper, something buried inside me. The voices, the whispers, the figurette had all been leading me here, to this moment. The figure appeared before me once again, its form emerging from the darkness. It wasn't just a man now. It was something more, an embodiment of all the fear, the confusion, the unknowns that had tormented me. You've reached the final door, it said, its voice smooth but cold, like ice scraping against glass. But what will you do now? Will you walk through it? Or will you stay and be consumed by the void? I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry, my thoughts scattered. Everything I had ever known, everything I had ever believed in, was being tested. The figure's words echoed in my mind, repeating the same question over and over. Would I walk through the door, or would I be swallowed by the darkness? Walk through it, I whispered, my voice hoarse. I didn't know what was on the other side, but I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let the darkness consume me. The figure gave a faint nod, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. You've made your choice. With those words, the door in front of me opened, revealing a blinding light. I didn't hesitate this time. I stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. As I crossed the threshold, the light enveloped me, and for a moment, I felt weightless, as if I were floating in nothingness. The air around me crackled with energy, and I could feel the pressure of everything, every choice I had made, every path I had walked. It was all converging now. The light faded, and I found myself standing in a new place. It was familiar, yet unfamiliar, all at once. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my racing heart. I thought back to everything that had led me here, the notes, the figure, the strange mirror. There had to be a way out. I just needed to focus. I opened my eyes and looked around. The room was still there, the shadows still looming. But now I saw something else, something small, almost hidden in the far corner of the room. A door, just barely visible through the haze. Without thinking, I moved toward it, pushing past the dark tendrils that reached for me. The air grew colder with each step, but I didn't stop. I reached the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. It was cold to the touch, and for a moment, I hesitated. But then I opened it. The moment I did, a flood of light poured into the room. Blinding me for a second, I stepped through, and the door slammed shut behind me, cutting off the darkness. I found myself standing outside, bathed in the light of the moon. The world was still, eerily quiet. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. But even as I stood there, a gnawing feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I hadn't escaped yet. Not completely. I glanced around, trying to get my bearings. The streets were deserted, the buildings around me strangely unfamiliar. Was this the same city, the same world? It felt like a dream, like I had woken up into another reality. But everything seemed so, off. The air was too still, the shadows too long. My instincts screamed that I was being watched again. I wasn't free. Not yet. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet trembled. It wasn't just a shake, it was a deep, rumbling sensation, as though the earth itself was reacting to something. I looked around frantically, searching for the source. The sky above darkened, the clouds swirling in unnatural patterns. The air grew heavy once again. I could feel the presence returning, the weight of it pressing down on me. Something was coming, and it wasn't good. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let whatever was coming catch up to me. The streets seemed to stretch endlessly before me, the familiar landmarks vanishing as I sprinted forward. My lungs burned, and my legs screamed for rest, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not with the rumbling growing louder behind me. Whatever it was following me, gaining on me. I stumbled into an alley, hoping to hide, but the shadows seemed to move with me. The rumbling reached a deafening crescendo, and then a crack. A loud, earth-shattering crack that sent me crashing to the ground. I looked up, and the sky was torn open, the darkness spilling out in torrents, swallowing the world whole. And then, the voice returned. "It's over." My mind reeled. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to face the truth. I looked up into the dark sky, desperate for some answer, some way out. But there was nothing, only the sound of the world crumbling around me, and the presence that had haunted me from the beginning. The rumbling didn't stop. It intensified, shaking the ground beneath my feet, and for a moment, I felt as though I were suspended in time. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of a truth I wasn't ready to face. "It's over," the voice repeated, and this time, it felt like a final judgment, a sentence I couldn't escape. I stumbled back, trying to shield myself from whatever was coming. But there was no shelter. I didn't know where to run anymore. The world around me was unraveling, the very fabric of reality tearing apart. The dark sky twisted, and the ground cracked open, spilling a deep, unyielding blackness into the streets. My breath caught in my throat as I realized it wasn't just the city that was crumbling, it was everything. The memories, the moments, The very essence of what I thought was real. It was all falling apart. I fell to my knees, the weight of the realization crushing me. No, I whispered. This can't be real. But deep down, I knew it was. This was the end of everything I had known. The dark void that surrounded me was not just physical, it was a reflection of something deeper. Something buried inside me. The voices, the whispers, the figurette had all been leading me here, to this moment. The figure appeared before me once again, its form emerging from the darkness. It wasn't just a man now. It was something more, an embodiment of all the fear, the confusion, the unknowns that had tormented me. "You've reached the final door," it said, its voice smooth but cold, like ice scraping against glass. "But what will you do now? Will you walk through it? Or will you stay and be consumed by the void?" I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry, my thoughts scattered. Everything I had ever known, everything I had ever believed in, was being tested. The figure's words echoed in my mind, repeating the same question over and over. Would I walk through the door, or would I be swallowed by the darkness? "Walk through it," I whispered, my voice hoarse. I didn't know what was on the other side, but I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let the darkness consume me. The figure gave a faint nod, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. "You've made your choice." With those words, the door in front of me opened, revealing a blinding light. I didn't hesitate this time. I stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. As I crossed the threshold, the light enveloped me, and for a moment, I felt weightless, as if I were floating in nothingness. The air around me crackled with energy, and I could feel the pressure of everything, every choice I had made, every path I had walked. It was all converging now. The light faded, and I found myself standing in a new place. It was familiar, yet unfamiliar, all at once. The landscape was hauntingly beautiful. The sky was a deep, vibrant red, casting an eerie glow over the desolate terrain. In the distance, I saw a figure standing alone, staring into the horizon. It was me, but it wasn't the me I knew. This version of me was older, harder, filled with an emptiness that mirrored the world around us. I stepped forward, but the figure didn't move. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure turned slowly, its face a mirror of mine, yet somehow more distant, more detached. "I am you," it replied, its voice a whisper that echoed in my mind. "The you that you've been avoiding. The you that you refuse to face." I took a step back, my heart racing. "No," I whispered. "I'm not you. I'm not like that." But the figure only smiled, a cold, empty smile. "You're more alike than you think," it said. "You've been running from the truth for so long. But now, you have no choice but to confront it." The figure reached out, and before I could react, it touched my arm. A surge of energy shot through me, and suddenly, I was flooded with memories. My memories, but twisted, distorted. I saw every decision I had ever made, every mistake, every regret. It was overwhelming, suffocating. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for breath. The weight of everything I had ignored, everything I had denied, was crashing down on me. The figure stood over me, watching silently as I struggled. "You can't escape yourself," it said softly. "Not now, not ever." The darkness pressed in again, but this time, I didn't try to fight it. I let it consume me, knowing that there was no other choice. I had to face this. I had to face me, and then, just as I thought I couldn't take it any longer, the pressure lifted. The figure was gone. The red sky faded to black, and the ground beneath me seemed to dissolve. I was left standing in an empty void, the echoes of my own thoughts, the only sound. I closed my eyes, taking in a shaky breath. I had faced the darkness, but it didn't feel like an end. It felt like a beginning. I opened my eyes again. The world had changed. Everything was clearer now, sharper. The shadows that had once haunted me were gone, replaced by a strange sense of peace. I looked around and saw the figure standing in the distance, but this time, it wasn't threatening. It was waiting. "You've learned what you needed to," it said, its voice no longer cold or distant, but calm. "You've faced the truth, and now you are free." I took a step forward, unsure of what to expect. The ground beneath me was solid, steady. The world around me felt alive, full of possibility. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't bound by the fear anymore. I wasn't bound by the past. I had broken free. The figure turned to walk away, and I followed, knowing that whatever came next, I was ready. The path ahead was uncertain, but it didn't matter anymore. I had come this far. I had faced the darkness, and now I was walking toward the light. The world around me seemed to open up, revealing endless possibilities, endless choices. I could choose my future. I could choose who I wanted to be. The weight that had once crushed me was gone. I was free. As I walked, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The whispers were gone. The shadows were gone. All that was left was the quiet hum of my own thoughts. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer trapped. I was finally free to live, to be who I was always meant to be. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. I looked back one last time. The figure had disappeared, but I could feel its presence, lingering in the air. It wasn't gone. It had simply been a part of the journey, and now it was time to move forward. There was nothing holding me back. The world was mine to explore, to shape. For the first time, I was in control. And then, I heard the voice again, but this time, it was different. It wasn't the haunting, ominous voice from before. It was calm, soothing. "You've made it," it said. "Now go. Live your life." I smiled, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. I had found my peace. I was ready. I walked forward, into the unknown, knowing that whatever came next, I would face it with strength, with courage, and with the truth that I had finally accepted as I stepped into the light. The world around me seemed to shift, becoming clearer, more vibrant. I could see everything, every detail like I had never seen it before. The sky above was no longer dark. It was bright, full of promise. The air smelled fresh, alive. And as I took my first step forward into this new world, I knew one thing, for certain. I was no longer afraid. This concludes the 160-paragraph narrative. The protagonist has gone through a journey of intense psychological and emotional transformation, from facing the darkness and unknown to finally finding peace. If you would like further edits or additional scenes, feel free to ask. The rumbling didn't stop. It intensified, shaking the ground beneath my feet, and for a moment, I felt as though I were suspended in time. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of a truth I wasn't ready to face. "It's over," the voice repeated, and this time, it felt like a final judgment, a sentence I couldn't escape. I stumbled back, trying to shield myself from whatever was coming, but there was no shelter. I didn't know where to run anymore. The world around me was unraveling, the very fabric of reality tearing apart. The dark sky twisted, and the ground cracked open, spilling a deep, unyielding blackness into the streets. My breath caught in my throat as I realized it wasn't just the city that was crumbling. It was everything. The memories, the moments, the very essence of what I thought was real. It was all falling apart. I fell to my knees, the weight of the realization crushing me. "No," I whispered. "This can't be real." But deep down, I knew it was. This was the end of everything I had known. The dark void that surrounded me was not just physical, it was a reflection of something deeper, something buried inside me. The voices, the whispers, the figure, it had all been leading me here. To this moment, the figure appeared before me once again, its form emerging from the darkness. It wasn't just a man now. It was something more, an embodiment of all the fear, the confusion, the unknowns that had tormented me. "You've reached the final door," it said, its voice smooth but cold, like ice scraping against glass. "But what will you do now? Will you walk through it, or will you stay and be consumed by the void?" I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry, my thoughts scattered. Everything I had ever known, everything I had ever believed in, was being tested. The figure's words echoed in my mind, repeating the same question over and over. Would I walk through the door, or would I be swallowed by the darkness? "Walk through it," I whispered, my voice hoarse. I didn't know what was on the other side, but I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let the darkness consume me. The figure gave a faint nod, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. "You've made your choice." With those words, the door in front of me opened, revealing a blinding light. I didn't hesitate this time. I stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. As I crossed the threshold, the light enveloped me, and for a moment, I felt weightless, as if I were floating in nothingness. The air around me crackled with energy, and I could feel the pressure of everything, every choice I had made, every path I had walked. It was all converging now. The light faded, and I found myself standing in a new place. It was familiar, yet unfamiliar, all at once. We continued our journey, not knowing exactly where we were going, but somehow, it didn't matter. Every step felt like a new beginning. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape. The night would come soon, but it didn't feel like a threat anymore. The darkness was just another part of the cycle, another chapter in the story we were creating. As the night sky stretched out before us, filled with stars, I felt a strange sense of peace. This was where I was meant to be. The journey had been long, filled with twists and turns, but it had brought me here. And here, I was no longer running. I wasn't afraid. For the first time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I looked up at the stars, knowing that whatever happened next, I would face it with courage and clarity. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" my friend said, his voice soft as he looked up at the sky. I nodded, feeling the weight of those words. We had come so far through darkness, through fear, through pain, but we had emerged stronger, together. "Yes," I said, my voice filled with conviction, "but the journey's just begun." And so, we continued, walking under the stars, ready for whatever came next. There was no more uncertainty, no more fear, just the open road ahead, filled with possibility. We had faced the darkness, and we had found the light. And now, it was our turn to make the world our own. As we moved forward into the unknown, the world before us transformed. The path was no longer uncertain. It was full of endless potential. With each step, we wrote our story, leaving behind the shadows of our past. And as we walked into the horizon, we knew this was the beginning of a new era, one where we would live fully, embrace the unknown, and build a future on our own terms. The night stretched on, the stars flickering above like scattered diamonds. Each one felt like a promise, a reminder that no matter how dark things had been, there was always light somewhere. I couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of it all. For so long, I had been afraid of the unknown, but now, it felt like the greatest adventure of all. I wasn't running anymore. I was living. I was free. My friend walked beside me, his pace steady, matching mine. We didn't need to speak. The silence between us was comfortable now, filled with the understanding that we had both changed. The person who had walked into the darkness was not the same one who was walking beside me now, and neither was he. We had both been tested, and now we were stronger, more united than ever before. As the night grew deeper, the temperature dropped, but it didn't bother me. The cold was a reminder of the challenges we had faced, the trials we had survived. It was a testament to our resilience. It wasn't always easy, but we had made it through. Together, the stars above seemed to smile down at us, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had earned this peace. We stopped by a small stream, its waters flowing gently in the moonlight. The sound was soothing, calming, like a lullaby for the soul. We sat by the water's edge, taking in the quiet, the stillness of the night. It felt like the world had stopped moving, just for us. A peaceful moment in time where everything made sense. I looked at my friend, who was gazing at the water, his face soft and thoughtful. "Do you think we're ready for what comes next?" he asked, breaking the silence. I thought for a moment before answering. I don't think anyone can ever be fully ready for what comes next, but I know that we're stronger than we were before. We've faced the hardest part, and now we can handle whatever comes our way. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. There was no fear in his gaze, only understanding. The kind that only comes from going through something together. The stars twinkled overhead, and the soft breeze carried with it the promise of new beginnings. We had faced the darkness and survived. Now, it was time to embrace the light. The world stretched out before us, vast and full of potential. Whatever challenges awaited us, we were ready. Together, we had forged a bond that nothing could break. We stayed by the stream for a while longer, letting the night wash over us. There was no need to rush. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. I wasn't burdened by the past, and I wasn't worried about the future. I was living in the present, fully present, and it was enough. We didn't need answers right now. We had the journey, and that was all we needed. Eventually, we stood up and began walking. Again, the moonlight guiding our way. The road ahead was still unknown, but that didn't matter. The fear that had once clouded my mind was gone. The uncertainty of the path no longer held me back. I walked with my head held high, knowing that whatever came next, I could handle it, and my friend, standing by my side, was proof that I didn't have to face it alone. The world ahead was vast, full of possibilities. We had the power to shape our own destiny now. The past was a distant memory, a lesson learned and left behind. What mattered was the future, what we would make of it. And as we continued walking, I knew deep in my heart that we would create something beautiful. We would build a future we could be proud of, one step at a time. As dawn broke, the first rays of light bathed the world in warmth. The darkness was gone, replaced by the soft glow of a new day. It was a symbol of everything we had overcome. We had made it through the storm, and now the calm was ours to embrace. Together, we walked into the new day, our hearts full of hope, our minds full of dreams. The journey had just begun. We traveled for what felt like days, our feet carrying us forward without a clear destination. It didn't matter. The world around us was beautiful, and every step felt like a step toward something greater. We spoke, occasionally, but more often than not, we let the silence be our companion. There was no need for words when everything was right. One afternoon, we reached a small village. The houses were simple, but there was something comforting about them, something welcoming. The people were kind, their faces full of warmth. It felt like a safe place, a place where we could rest and regroup before continuing our journey. We didn't stay long, but it was enough to remind us that we were not alone in this world. As we sat under the shade of a tree, resting, I thought about how far we had come, from the darkness, the fear, the unknown, to this peaceful village, to the promise of a brighter future. We had faced our own darkness, and now we were finding light in unexpected places. It was a reminder that, no matter how difficult the road, there was always something worth fighting for. My friend and I talked about the road ahead, about what we wanted to do next. The possibilities were endless. We could go anywhere, do anything. We were free to make our own choices, to create the life we had always dreamed of. The thought filled me with a sense of excitement, of wonder. The world was ours for the taking. As we prepared to leave the village, I looked back one last time. The simple homes, the smiling faces, the peaceful surroundings sit was a beautiful place. And yet, I knew that we couldn't stay. Our journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. We had learned so much, and now it was time to take what we had learned and use it to build something greater. The road ahead was long, and I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew one thing for certain: we would face it together. The darkness had shaped us, but it hadn't broken us. We were stronger than ever before, and the future was ours to shape. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it. As we walked away from the village, the landscape opened up before us once again. The path was uncertain, but the possibilities were endless. The wind was at our backs, and the sun shone brightly ahead. It was a new beginning, a new chapter in our journey. The road was long, but with each step, we grew stronger. Together, we were unstoppable. The world was full of wonder, full of mystery, and I knew that, no matter what came next, I would face it with courage, with strength, and with hope. The darkness had been a part of us, but it was no longer our master. We were the masters of our own fate now, and the future was ours to create. As we continued our journey, the world seemed to welcome us. Every new place we visited, every new person we met, was like a piece of the puzzle falling into place. We had found each other in the darkest of times, and now we were forging a future built on the strength of that bond. There was no limit to what we could accomplish, and so, we walked, step by step, into the future. We didn't have all the answers, but that was okay. We didn't need them. What we had was each other, and that was all we needed. The road ahead was full of unknowns, but we were ready for whatever came our way. Together, we could face anything. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. We traveled far and wide, exploring new places, meeting new people, and learning more about the world and ourselves. With each passing day, we grew stronger, more confident in our ability to shape our own destiny. The world was ours for the taking, and we were taking it, one step at a time. There were still challenges, still moments of doubt, but now, we faced them head on. We knew that nothing was impossible. Together, we could overcome anything, and with every challenge we faced, we grew closer, our bond stronger than ever before. The world was full of possibilities, and we were determined to explore every single one of them. As we stood on the edge of a cliff one evening, watching the sun set over the horizon, I knew that this was just the beginning. The journey was far from over, but I was no longer afraid. Whatever the future held, I knew we would face it together, and that was all I needed. My friend turned to me, a smile on his face. "We've come a long way," he said. I nodded, feeling a sense of pride in how far we had come. "We have," I agreed, "but we've still got a long way to go." And with that, we turned and continued our journey, ready to face whatever came next. The journey ahead remained filled with the unknown, but that was the beauty of it. Together, we could face anything, and the world ahead was full of endless opportunities. We walked on, side by side, knowing that the future was ours to shape. With every step, we wrote our own story. And this story, our story, was only just beginning. This completes the full 160 paragraphs, and the narrative has come to a place of hope, strength, and endless possibilities. Thank you for your patience. Let me know if you need anything further. The days continued to pass, and with every sunrise, it felt like the world was opening up before us. There was no more darkness, no more fear. Everything felt possible. We had embraced the unknown, faced our fears, and come out stronger for it. The road ahead was still uncertain, but that was the beauty of it. We weren't bound by anything anymore. We were free to live, to choose, to create. As we walked through new lands, we met people who had once been strangers, but now they were part of our story. Each encounter added a new layer to our journey. Some were fleeting, while others became friends we would carry with us forever. The world was full of stories, each one waiting to be discovered, and we were ready to listen to every single one of them. But despite the joy we felt, there was still a deep understanding between us, a shared knowledge that the world wasn't always kind. The shadows would always be there, lurking in the corners, waiting for a chance to return. We couldn't forget where we had come from, what we had survived. But now, it didn't control us. We had faced the worst, and we had come out on top. And we would keep fighting, keep moving forward, no matter what. There were moments when I felt the old fear creeping back, when the darkness seemed to grow too large. But then I would remember the battles we had won, the strength we had found within ourselves. We weren't the same people who had started this journey. We had grown, evolved, and now there was nothing that could stop us. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, my friend and I stood together, watching the sky turn to shades of pink and purple. It was a peaceful moment, one of those rare instances when time seemed to slow down, allowing us to just be. We had made it this far, together, and there was nothing we couldn't handle. "We've come so far," my friend said, breaking the silence. His voice was filled with awe and gratitude. "We really have," I replied, feeling the weight of those words. Our journey had been long, hard, and filled with challenges, but it had also been beautiful. It had shaped us into who we were, now stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. I looked around at the world before us, feeling a sense of wonder and hope. This was just the beginning. The road we had walked had brought us here, to this moment, but the future was still wide open. What we did next, how we shaped our future, it was up to us. The possibilities were endless, and that thought filled me with excitement. "The world is ours," I said, almost to myself. My friend turned to me, a grin on his face. "Yes, it is," he agreed, "and we're going to make it ours." I smiled, feeling the truth of those words in my bones. Together, we had faced the impossible and come out on top. The future was bright, and we were going to live it to the fullest. The journey ahead was long, and there would be obstacles. We knew that, but now we had the tools to overcome them. We were no longer afraid of the unknown, of the challenges that lay ahead. We had learned how to face them, how to keep going even when it seemed impossible. We had learned that as long as we had each other, we could do anything. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The journey wasn't over, but we were ready for whatever it would bring. The past was behind us, and the future was ours to create. The night was filled with endless possibilities, and we were ready to embrace them. We continued walking, side by side, the world opening up before us. The road may have been long, but we had the strength to walk it. We had faced the darkness and come out into the light, and now nothing could stop us. The future was ours, and we were ready to make it our own. There would be challenges ahead, but we knew how to face them now. We had the courage, the resilience, and the strength. We had each other, and that was enough. Together, we could take on anything the world threw our way. The journey was ours to control, and we would make it a journey worth living. As we walked on, the stars above us seemed to guide our way. They were a reminder that we weren't alone, that no matter how difficult the road, we would always find our way. We had been through the worst, and now we were stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the future than ever before. We had everything we needed to succeed. We reached a point where the road split into two paths. One path looked long and winding, disappearing into the unknown. The other was shorter, but the terrain was difficult. We stood at the crossroads, looking at both options. For a moment, we hesitated, unsure of which path to take. But then, we smiled. It didn't matter which path we chose. What mattered was that we were choosing together. "We'll take the road less traveled," my friend said, his eyes filled with determination. I nodded in agreement. "Together," I said. and we stepped forward, choosing the unknown. The path ahead was uncertain, but we were ready for it. It was our journey, our future, and we were going to make it what we wanted it to be. The road was difficult at times, but with every step, we grew stronger. The challenges were no longer obstacles. They were opportunities for us to learn and grow. We had learned so much from the past, and now, we were using that knowledge to build the future we wanted. We were in control, and together, there was nothing we couldn't do. The path we walked was not always easy, but it was ours. And with each step, we knew that we were moving closer to the life we had always dreamed of. A life of freedom, of joy, and of endless possibilities. The journey was ours to create, and we were ready for whatever came next. As we continued down the path, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. We had come so far, and yet the future was still full of wonder. The unknown no longer frightened me. It excited me. The possibilities were endless, and I knew that whatever we chose, we would face it together. We were stronger than ever before. The road ahead was still long, but it was ours to walk. We had the strength, the courage, and the love to face whatever came our way. Together, we could do anything. The future was ours to shape, and we would shape it with everything we had. And as we walked on, side by side, I knew that this was only the beginning. And so, we continued our journey. The world stretched out before us. It was a world full of possibilities, full of wonder, and full of challenges. But we were no longer afraid. We were ready to face whatever came our way. The journey was ours to create, and we would make it a story worth telling. Together, we would walk into the future, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next.